Welcome to the initiative.
Woot.
I am Adam,
I'm Lindsay.
and this podcast is going to be about
Sci-Fi. Video games.
the media of those.
Yes. Pop culture, internet, whatever the hell we want to talk about.
Yeah, so welcome to
Hi.
the initiative. Everyone else, not you. But yeah, the reason why Lindsay and I are creating this podcast is because of kind of all started from the video games No Man's Sky and Star Citizen.
I mean, we always kind of talk about whatever we're into at the time, and we spend hours and hours ranting about it. And then when Adam started getting really into Star Citizen, it turned into much deeper conversations, and we figured, hey, this would be fun to do a podcast on.
Maybe some people would be interested in hearing our conversations. I don't know. That's what.
Oh, it's totally from a conceit that we are interesting and have valuable things to say.
We think so. So we'll see if you guys are interested as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll try not to get too meta on this first episode, but invariably we'll probably slip into that where we'll start talking about, doing a podcast because it's a little awkward.
Yeah, I'm not much of a public speaker, but just talking casually is very easy for me.
Yeah, and we're used to talking to each other. We never really shut up. So hopefully we get to that place here, but just acknowledge the ice and move on, and then maybe later it'll start to crumble. Yes.
And all right, so let's I kind of want to talk about the No Man's Sky. We both started playing that game. It was right after their big release last year. They added a lot of content.
Was that only a year ago?
It was last summer.
Wow.
2018.
Yeah, and I think you described the game to me, and then I got really excited because that's basically all I've ever wanted from a game is the ability to just take off in a spaceship and fly directly to another planet. Like, that's insane to me.
It's that feeling of exploration and
pure freedom.
No one's ever been to that planet before, literally, because everything's procedurally generated, so there's literally trillions of planets and stars, and you can name them. There's something very gratifying, just like, this is my planet now. I name it. I can build on it, and it's mine.
Yeah,
other people can land on it, but whatever, it's mine.
That fulfills every single one of my fantasies about gaming, is that it's a total isolation from any sort of community or structure, civilization. But then they pepper it here and there with like ruins and a story, of course, and missions. So it's not like you're totally alone. But if you want to be, you can choose to take that path.
Yeah, and it's definitely gone a long way as far, when I've read, I didn't play it before that big release last year, but it's just it's been really good. I love base building. I love that, it has that very Minecraft effect. You can base build and
the comparisons to Minecraft are immediate.
Yeah, there's you have a tool and you dig through the earth, and you use those resources to build bigger and better things. It's basically space Minecraft with emphasis on exploration. Minecraft was more about survival than necessarily the exploration of the blocky planet.
I think the thing they do really well is the flying in the ship from planet to planet, or just flying along the surface of the planet, landing on things, that aspect of it, and kind of that initial approach to an unfamiliar world where all of a sudden you're taking in the new weather and the new plant life and the new atmosphere.
Or now the new ocean environment.
Yes. But the thing that gets monotonous after a while is that aspect of collecting the same materials and seeing the same kind of plants and doing the same thing over and over again, basically. I think that's the aspect of it that either they have to work on, or maybe I'm not playing the game right.
Yeah, there needs to be more gameplay mechanics. I mean, there's something very gratifying just getting in there and flying and exploring. But, I like a little bit more of a story with my game, or a little bit more world building. There's some world building they do with the storyline, I guess, but that they're doing a lot of work. They're still building out stuff.
And I think that's a pretty common complaint, that there's not enough variety.
Yeah, I mean it's all procedurally generated. Animals and plants are different every time, but you can still feel the similarities between.
Yeah, it'll be the same plant, but it's like a different color and it has a different name, basically.
Yeah. So we kind of taken a break from that game, and and then I was looking up other games similar to it just to kind of see what's out there. There's games like Elite Dangerous where you could space flight, but what really got my interest was Star Citizen,
which is a whole different. It's not just a game. Do you want to give like a 20-second intro to Star Citizen for people who've never heard of it?
Yeah. I mean, it's. I've asked a lot of people, and they're vaguely familiar because of the huge crowdsourcing that they did in the beginning of 2012. They had
7 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy how and they promised 2012 crowdsourcing. They raised record amounts of money, and they promised the game like around 2014. But they got so much money, and they wanted to do more with the game. So I wasn't part of that at all. I just discovered it like earlier this year.
Yeah.
But, a lot of people were disappointed because they didn't get their game they paid for. But
what was the original premise of the game before it got so big?
Oh, it must have been just a simple space simulator with a bunch of planets that you could explore. It had to have been limited in what you could do. Like Elite Dangerous, you can't get out of your ship. You can't walk around.
Oh, really?
It's just a spaceship game, basically. There's no body aspect to it. There's just the ship and you controlling it, essentially. I mean, and then all the economics are controlled via menus and that source. So there's no like walking around or anything. So it might have been similar to that. Would have been a lot easier to implement, but
they ended up with way too much money.
Anyways, to continue explaining what its current state, I'm not really sure what it was before, but its current state is kind of like exactly what I'm looking for. It offers the exploration aspect, or I should say, premise this with, it's still an alpha, and you'll be able to do some of these. So that's kind of what I was interested about, is what they're planning to do with it, and the progress they're currently making with the game. You can do deliveries, you can do cargo shipments currently, you can do dogfights, you can space battles, you can do first person shooter combat on the ground or in space stations. They have one vehicle that you currently can use for mining space rocks. There's other aspects. Am I missing? But yeah, that's kind of like the starting point currently with its current 3.5 alpha stage.
But the scope of where they want to go is the thing that's so, I think, revolutionary in gaming. More
fun thinking about it.
I know, right?
I mean, they have a part on the website where they kind of laid it out, the shipyard. Wish that had that up, but the shipyard where it kind of is like the template of what they want to do for like gameplay mechanics.
Well, the ships are huge for starters. Like they're enormous, and you can do things on the ships. And then there's the smaller kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but like the single pilot ships that you can use to go more agile around, and they're probably cheaper, right? But eventually they're going to have these giant ships that you can have up to 70 people on. Is that what it is?
Well, like the ones that you can buy, I think will be like up to 80. And then there's the super mega like ship that you can have up to 800 people on.
Dang.
But those ships are a little unique to the persistent universe. That's the multiplayer part of the game. Is that's going to be more part of corporations or guilds or clans or whatever.
Right.
No one's able to repair that ship on their own and run it on their own or fly it on your own.
Yeah, you can't get an 800-person ship and then just drive it by yourself.
So yeah, you have to get an organization together and pool money to repair it back up, because sometimes it'll start off maybe on a planet in a collapsed state, so you have to repair it from there. And there's only going to be a limited amount of them in the persistent universe, so maybe like 10 maybe. So one organization could just have one, and the in-game government, they have the majority of them. Mm-hmm. So the NPCs will have these massive ships. But again, that's all future state.
Yeah,
they do have a lot of big ships now. There's like the Reclaimer going. I was riding in that ship, and like it's literally like 10-15 stories tall, and you go in this, it's not elevator but a freight elevator, and it's just this massive,
and there's no loading screen, there's no like transition, you're not in a separate bubble that is the ship.
Yeah, there's no I'm outside of the ship, I'm now loading into the ship. It's all
a crawlable thing that
on
exists.
The server. Yeah.
That's the part of it that, to me, this game is all about realism. So those of us who really like sci-fi and really like space travel, this is, in my opinion, as close as you're going to get to the real thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, Tesla's scratching.
Yeah, we have 2 dogs.
They're normally very quiet when we're in here, but you might hear like every now and then some noises.
Yeah, hopefully they're not going to bark too much, but...
they have opinions, too.
They do.
They don't like video games.
No, they're very sad when we are not paying attention to them.
But yeah, the realistic aspect of being in a ship as an object that you're inside and also that's flying. Like No Man's Sky is very clear, like you're outside of the ship and then you're in the ship. Right. And it's 2 separate universes.
Yeah, basically... You just turn into the ship.
For that. Yeah.
I guess a lot like Elite Dangerous. But I mean, you could get outside the ship, and maybe they'll change that for No Man's Sky. But yeah, like it's the realism aspect of it. It's really a Star Trek simulator.
Basically, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to have more capabilities than Star Trek, because even in Star Trek, they're clearly just in one room and things are happening, and this is. You can go anywhere. I'm really excited about, I don't know what the name of the ship is, but it's this huge ship with like farming pods in it where you can grow things inside the ship, which that's always been my favorite trope of space movies. But your mission, because you can kind of choose what kind of person you want to be, but your mission is to go to the corners of the universe and find rare plants and rare seeds and propagate them inside your ship and then sell them in the popular cities and kind of places where people need those materials, which to me, I'm not a fan of combat in games. It stresses me out, and it's fun every now and then, but like I don't want my main purpose to be to defend myself. I like the idea of trying to find things that are far away and using them to repopulate like a big chunk of that resource and then sell it off. Like I'm a grinder. I like grinding.
Yeah. I was trying to find that chip. So Star Citizen, the website's robertspaceindustries.com, so I'm trying to find that chip she's talking about.
It's huge. It's just a prototype right now. Like you can't walk around inside of it.
You can't even see it. It's not even built out by the developers.
Yeah, they're releasing ships like piece by piece because they're so huge, and then you are able to preview them, but right now they cost real money. I think that was it. It's called the Endeavor.
Yeah, so it's this massive ship. It is literally 200 meters long. It's
enormous.
20 meters tall.
It has 4 biopods.
Yeah, 4 biopods that are modular, I should say. So you can go back to your hangar and then switch these out. So like you were saying, you get these modules. One could be like a greenhouse. One could be like a science laboratory. Mm-hmm. for researching.
And the greenhouses are like bubbles of glass, which is really cool.
Yeah, and they're just like, they're massive. It's like an actual, you could create your own farm on the ship.
Yeah.
Or you can...
It's a traveling farm.
Yeah, or get these really expensive plants that, have a really small time frame before you have to harvest them. So maybe it makes sense doing it on a ship rather than on a planet. And then you can switch out those modules for like a med bay and a hangar. So you would park this massive ship near a battle. So when the ship dies, you respawn on the ship instead of on a planet. And then you can get your ship going, go off the hangar, and get right back into battle. So
that's kind of like that Hugh Howey story that we were reading that we were listening to on our road trip.
Which one was that?
The idea of being in a soldier in a ship and being sent down to the battlefield and then dying and then respawning in the ship. And then,
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That was so. That's definitely kind of how they're doing. So that, like in a space battle, maybe that makes world of difference. Maybe you don't have the manpower, but you have the respawn ability and able to get back in the fight quicker, and maybe that's what makes the difference in the battle. But that's just one ship out of like 50, 100 different ships, and each ship has different variants.
And they're only releasing a couple at a time. And since the game, correct me if I'm wrong, but since the game is still in alpha, the money that you make in game doesn't really matter because it's going to reset when the game is in beta.
Yeah. So the current state is, so you can make in-game money and you can save it to buy ships. Some ships are cheaper than others, of course, based on its size or capability. But right now that in-game currency kind of just reset like every release, and never releases quarterly,
which I think is fair because it limits the ability for people who've been there from the beginning to become OP before everybody else can start playing the game.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the concepts that I was reading about, that you could have the largest ship and whatever, but maybe that doesn't make a difference. They want the smaller ships to be meaningful too.
Yeah.
They want a smaller spacecraft in a battle. Maybe an ace pilot can just wreak havoc to this large ship with all these gunnery elements to it. Like it just doesn't matter because that small little ship was just too good, too quick to be targeted.
Well, and as we all know, every single large ship has one empty corridor going right through the middle that if you blow up that one corridor, you destroy the entire ship.
Yeah, there's like vents and flying a torpedo. Okay, yes, nice reference.
Yeah, he's rolling his eyes at me right now.
Yeah, I wonder if they do have like weakness points on ships. Like some ships have strong shields but weak armor, like the metal part of it.
Right.
That'd be interesting to see, because you don't want like a massive ship to just be unbearably strong. It's got to have some weak points, maybe like no armaments on the back of the ship. So
I think that's the hard part is balancing all that out, because there's so many different aspects of gameplay for this game, because you can do so many different things and there's so many different environments that making sure that something isn't one note and that everything has kind of checks and balances to make sure that it doesn't become the thing that everybody does that's got to be so complicated.
Yeah, they just changed the flight model on how the ship flies recently, so they had to go retune every ship again.
Yeah.
So it makes sense with the new flight model. The bigger the game gets, it's going to be more and more complex for them to make changes. But so far, yeah, they're currently on built out. So again, I'm just talking about the persistent universe. We'll talk about the single player in a second.
Right.
But it's in a system, a star system called Stanton, and is that right? Oh, I think so. Man, I gotta have all these references up for my memory sucks. But
no, that's the whole point of a podcast is to test your. My one meta comment is if you have all of the information at your fingertips, it's less interesting because then there's no people listening going, no, that's not right.
All right, then we'll call it the Stanton system, and I think that's right, but who cares, right? So, Stanton system, this is their first star system they're building out. They're planning for 100 or so, but they're working on building the planet tech and the star tech and space system tech, stations and all that, satellites and everything that goes within a star system. And they're gonna eventually procedurally generate more of that in the future. Some more of it becomes automated, and they can build out a lot quicker. But right now they're just focusing on one system and building out planets at different types. We have a city planet.
The city planet. It's all city.
So like Coruscant in Star Wars, which was in the episodes 1, 2, and 3. It was referenced.
Oh.
So you probably.
I mean,
you gotta watch it on principle of
science fiction. You were watching it on. I saw 1, 2, and 3 backwards because you were watching them by yourself, and then you were like, "Oh, you got to see this scene," and then you rewinded it, and we're like, "This is the scene that came before." We watched the entire first movie that way.
Well, I wanted to show you. No, I was the second two. Cause
I wouldn't know because I haven't seen them.
Last two. Because I wanted to show you all the horrible Hayden Christensen,
which turned out to be all of it. So we ended up watching the entire thing in reverse, which it's not a very complicated story, so I could follow it, but the weirdest way to watch a movie.
Yeah, sorry. We'll watch it. We'll maybe have a few drinks or so.
Yeah.
And watch them.
I think that's a necessary ingredient for that kind of thing.
Yeah. So story aside, Coruscant, giant city planet, very cool, and that was kind of the basis of their thought for ArcCorp, the name of that city planet. And each planet in this system is owned by a mega corporation, basically.
Yeah, which is really cool because then you end up with different design elements and branding and
that's very
story.
Important in the game is the branding and like each company has a different architecture and feel to it. And even with the ships, like each ship manufacturer kind of has a lot of familiar elements like you would with cars or houses or whatever.
Yeah. Shout out to Morphologists. Is that the right one?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So what he does, he's an architect, and he does this series on YouTube called An Architect Reviews, and he reviews the various ships on Star Citizen. And does he review the world too, or just the ships?
I think he does too, but the reason why I showed you a bunch of his videos is it was like an actual architect reviewing the ships and the flow, the design. Like
really granular down to like the materials that were used. And I work in the building industry, so a lot of it was really familiar to me. And it's really in depth in talking about the idea of designing a gameplay element that is supposed to mimic how real people would use it in real life. So it really gets you thinking about, okay, yeah, why is that room over there? Or why is that chair facing that way? Or how is the light from the window going to play when you're going past a star and stuff like that? It was really interesting.
City, and you get the natural glow of the city lights.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot going on there.
So that's Morphologist on YouTube, and we watched like all of his review videos, which is really cool.
Yeah. And then there's also there's the Hurston planet, which is more like a red dusty desert planet, and then there's going to be a gas planet, so there's going to be a city that's going to be sitting on the clouds, Cloud City, from probably another Star Wars pull there.
I think in Final Fantasy X there was not a planet, obviously, because Final Fantasy is all one world, but there was a continent that was all floating in the air. That's very different though, because you just kind of spawn in that world, but the world building aspect is really cool. They're not totally realistic, but they're kind of thinking about, okay, if we were going to have a corporation build out on a gas planet, what could it look like? Which is cool.
I mean, they explain why, because a science-y reason for it, or how it can float.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, we won't go deep into that. And then there's another planet that's going to be built on an ice planet. So there's like different architectures, different building structures for each planet. It's very cool. So that's kind of where the current game is at. You get a bunch of ships, you got some planets, you got space stations, you got it has pirating. Can't forget that.
What?
You can be a pirate in the game, right?
Oh my gosh.
A smuggler.
I forgot about that.
Those are legitimate.
Well, they have those Corsair ships, right?
Oh, that's a new ship they just introduced.
And we're looking at one right now called Buccaneer, which
I mean, some like Drake Interplanetary, they're like budget ships, it's function over form, they're
very Firefly.
Yeah, I did get one ship that's kind of a Firefly shaped ship.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many ships. So that's the persistent universe. That's the multiplayer universe. I kind of want to briefly touch on the single player.
I keep forgetting that exists.
Squadron 42. It's got Mark Hamill in it, appropriately enough.
And Gillian Anderson and
Gollum.
Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis, yes, the originator. Of mocap. They're using mocap within the game for all the facial animations
and for players. Players can do mocap, right? Well, it's not exactly mocap.
Yeah, it's called VoIP. So like VoIP, but with your face.
Over interface.
Internet Protocol.
Oh, okay.
IP. Face over IP, just like VoIP is voice over IP.
I knew that.
I think. Whatever. Yeah. So like. You'll be able to communicate with voice in the persistent universe, and then also with your face. But it's not going to be your real face. It's going to be your character's face talking. But if you say a word, your character's also going to mimic your face, because there'll be a camera on your face, and other players can see your avatar that you've created.
Which there's so many rabbit holes that we could go down in terms of exploring the implications, and we do want to save some of that for later episodes because it's really interesting. But
we're just kind of just talking about why this game is so fascinating at the moment.
The conjecture that we're making, or that I'm making, and I think you agree with me here, is that this is going to be the next big game, like WoW, like Halo, but I think it's going to be bigger than that, because it touches so many different aspects of gameplay that other people can get into. Like the fact that both you and I are interested in it. We have very different gaming preferences.
Yeah, and this game is going to have everything that you would want in gaming preferences. If you have one gaming preference, there'll be like a career path you could take.
Yeah.
It's just they're doing so many different things in this game that you can do that.
And it's not surface level. They're going deep on every single aspect, which is why it's taken 7 years.
Yeah, it's going to take much longer, but Squadron 42 is coming out next year, or they're going in beta next year.
Oh, wow, really?
Yep. So again, they're going to have some, Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. He's going to be the general. Yeah. I don't think he's evil.
I mean,
you want him to be evil, but
I don't want him to be evil. I know the pattern, and the pattern is that he has never played a good character in his entire life.
Yeah, totally understandable. So they're creating this whole single player game. It's going to be a bit more storyline driven, so more linear. Mm-hmm. So there's a Stanton system in the persistent universe. I don't know what the other system is called, but they're working on creating another system for the Squadron 42 single player game. So it is just single player. It's just going to be you and the game and the story.
Can you get into that system if you're in the persistent universe?
I think eventually, yeah. I think they're like you'll be. It's just I think they're focusing on it for single player and enhancing it for single player, and then after that game releases, I think they'll probably connect it to each other, so you'll have two systems you can start exploring.
That's cool.
But at the moment, yeah, they're two separate workflows going on, and it's kind of cool because like all the technology and like they were creating how a body tumbles or like a ragdoll mechanics.
Yeah.
They were building that in Squadron 42, let's say, and then a lot of that stuff they can translate or move to the persistent universe. So they're basically the same gameplay and mechanics and shooting and flying and everything's going to be the same. It's a lot easier to build it for a single player game,
right?
Because you don't have to deal with the networking and how things are displayed to you, the player, and other people that are near you, and how it's loaded on the server, etc. So it's easier to create single player, so they build it there first. That's the priority.
And it's also a lot easier to mass market a game when you have a single player aspect and a story aspect and famous faces. I think that's a strategic move on their part too, is that once they bring the single player mode into beta, they can bring a lot more attention to the game, because the idea of a huge persistent universe where you have the power and you have the control and there's all these infinite possibilities, that's really attractive to hardcore gamers. And a lot of the people who are going to be hardcore into that are already into this game, but selling it to a bigger audience is going to rely on that single player story, I feel.
Yeah. Kind of backstory for games I like. I mean,
yeah,
I don't like playing games that don't have a good single player, or at least a good world building experience,
which is why you're not as into Minecraft as I am.
Yeah, it's like there's no story really, and I like building and doing creative stuff, or seeing what cool stuff you can do with redstone, but it only goes so far for me. So like Halo, when it first came out back in the early 2000s,
oh my gosh,
it was a very basic game. It had a very linear gameplay, like gameplay wise. It had some complaints, but the story was just so good.
Yeah.
It did so much world building. It was humanity in the 2500s. There's, and then we encounter aliens. And,
it was a very distinct narrative. It was airtight.
Yeah, and so the multiplayer would have been empty without that.
Yeah. If they had started with just the multiplayer.
Yeah, then they wouldn't have games Red versus Blue to build upon that story in their own way.
Yeah.
That
was kind of unique, though, in terms of the multiplayer.
Halo created a precedent.
They created a genre.
Yeah.
Halo is the J.R.R. Tolkien of gaming.
Their storytelling's all right, but a lot of the stuff came from the books, a lot of the lore and the...
Well, even just the gameplay. They invented so many things.
Yeah. It was originally going to be a third-person game.
Really?
Before
I did not know that.
They moved it to the Xbox. Yep. Cool little factoid. And then to the alternative, so you have games like Titanfall, the first Titanfall game. I got that because it was a really cool concept.
Wasn't that the first-person Xbox One game? Or one of the first?
Oh. Yeah, it was one of the early ones, I think.
Yeah.
And I got it, and it was cool, but it was just multiplayer, and the story, it wasn't a story.
Big disappointment.
It was a multiplayer game, but the story was such on the back burner. They admit it. They focused all on the multiplayer, and there was some vague elements of story in there, but I couldn't play it long. It was an okay game, multiplayer game to me.
But you can tell that the storyline was a second thought.
It was a third thought. They specifically created a multiplayer game because they had a low, they didn't have a huge budget or a lot of developers.
Is that the same thing that happened with Destiny? Why Destiny kind of crashed? Or was that because it had so many network problems?
Well, Destiny was created by Bungie. Weird enough.
Oops.
So bye. But they had some. Yeah, that's a whole other bag of. Cats.
I that might have been the opposite problem, where it was a good story, but the multiplayer aspect was repetitive.
No, it had a bad story.
And the multiplayer aspect was repetitive.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely improved it with following patches and releases, but I stopped because I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Come out with a disappointing game and then expect it for me to pay for that and come back.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky was good because if you paid for it, you got all these free updates, and they're still updating the game for free. That if you get a disappointing release, don't make people pay more to maybe hope it gets better.
Yeah, you have to build that trust. You have to be able to let the audience see the potential the same way you do, which I think is what Star Citizen is really good at, especially since they're so transparent in the things that they're trying to do. Like, they have so many media outlets and people talking about it and generating the hype and answering questions.
They even have so I'm a software developer, and they have a workflow called Jira. At my work they use Rally, but it's a storyboard movement of tasks. So they display their workboard. So like that ragdoll thing, they had like a little card for that, saying we're going to introduce ragdoll mechanics, and it's going to be in 3.5 release, and then they have the 3.6 release, 3.7 release. So they have their whole workflow kind of visible to us,
right?
And they
which is what people want.
a week. So they open that to give you more visibility into the game.
I think that was a really big vulnerability. Like, that was a brave move.
Yeah, they I don't think they had that at one point earlier in their game, and there's a lot of politics with Star Citizen.
We have to save a whole episode for that.
Yeah, but right now they came in, they wanted to provide more visibility to the people backing them, so you're getting stuff like that. You're getting updates weekly about the game. You're getting direct access in their forums to the developers, and you can ask questions and they can answer it. They're very open. There's again, we're not going to get into politics of of stuff that they're not open about, but for a video game developer, this is the most open I've ever seen,
which is it's long overdue. They're scratching the itch that a lot of gamers feel, where they want to be involved, they want to hear about the process. One of the fantasies of being a gamer is also being a game developer and having a say in how the game is created. And people who play games all day, every day, do have very strong opinions about how things are built and how they function, and preferences, and wanting to know more and dive deep into how everything works. And they're really good at gratifying that wish, I feel.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool helping develop a game. You're a QA person. I mean, you're paying to be a QA. So you're paying to...
Suckers.
Right, exactly. But you're paying to support them.
Yeah.
But you're also helping them test it out, and you're kind of like helping them to build it out. And, if something's broken, it's still an alpha. They're still creating the game. So every time I can't, I'm like, oh man, I died and I lost... thousands of credits, and I'm like, I'm kind of upset and wasted time, but it can't be mad at the game.
Because you're a tester.
I'm testing the game.
It's brilliant in terms of marketing, in terms of keeping people engaged. Putting your skin in the game turns flaws into like a group effort. Like, it was a really good idea on their part, I think.
Yeah, and they're getting a lot of feedback, and that is crucial for any development of any software.
Instant feedback, basically.
Video games, especially, having this instant feedback or this collection of data. More data is powerful. Being able to use it to make the game far better before it even gets in the beta or before even the next quarterly release.
Which is smart, I feel like, because it's so expensive and time consuming, and it's really a gamble if you release a game without that. We can compare, I don't know too much about it, but you played it. We can compare it to what happened with Fallout 76, which is when they announced Fallout 76, they were already pretty much done with it, and nobody had any clue that that's what it was going to be. And then it didn't do so well.
Yeah, they weren't very open to... Yeah, they're very closed about the development process, and that's very traditional gameplay development, is doing all this work and
in secret.
Yeah, I mean, and that worked before, where you're like, oh, we're gonna create this cool game for you, but we're not gonna tell you. We want to keep it a surprise.
Yeah, build up the hype for it, and then.
But if no one's asking for it, or.
And then, especially when you're standing up at a stage and you're saying, this is what it's going to be and this is what you want, trying to put that idea in people's heads of like, we already finished this and this is going to be everything that you didn't even know you wanted. And it's a bit cocky.
Yeah. And I think for other people who follow Bethesda, what's that guy's name that runs the place? Yeah, he's notorious for over-promising stuff and not delivering.
And that's how you create a whole subgenre of memes.
Yeah, he is a meme. So, yeah, and I hope Fallout 76 improves. I mean, that's kind of...
It has potential.
It has a lot of potential, but there was no story. Yeah. Again, I want story. Otherwise, it's a lifeless, empty world to me. And it's just a multiplayer game.
On the flip side of that, and I feel like we can talk about this a little bit more when we get into the next topic, but for me, for someone who doesn't necessarily need a prescribed story, I can create my own story. But if that's the case, I want to have the freedom to do that. And I feel like they restricted a lot of things that someone who was into that wouldn't want restricted. Like the idea that you can build... One of the cool things about Fallout 4 was building the base. But for Fallout 76, they fixed a lot of bugs with base building, and we're going to make this a big part of the game. But because it was multiplayer and you have this limited island that you're all playing on, they made it so that your base travels with you, which makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, you get like a 30 by 30 sphere of building, and it's permanent to that location, but you can just immediately call it to your position
which would make sense if it was a ship. But for me, when I'm base building, the imagination part of it is I chose this plot of land because I have this vantage point, or this resource, or I want to defend this chunk of earth and this is mine, and I'm a minute away from this location that's not mine, and I can see it evolve over time. Like I install this turret and it breaks down. And I really liked the base building in Fallout 4. It was pretty flawed. You had limited materials. The clipping was awful. And you didn't have a lot of space. Yeah, you didn't have a lot of space to work with. But sometimes I feel like restriction is the key to creativity. If you give it too much freedom that's not logical, then it doesn't make sense. And then it ruins the immersion for me.
Yeah, no, and again, we'll see what they do, and if they can resolve some of those issues. And it's still its own game. I don't know. I hope it does well. I like the Fallout storyline and the series, so
it's just kind of annoying when someone gets up on a stage and says, this is what you wanted. And then it's not what you wanted.
I mean, everyone wants to be Steve Jobs. You want this. No, it's crap.
Right.
You want it. Okay, I do want it. Okay.
Darcy, come here. Sorry, baby's crying.
Oh, no.
Darcy. So, yeah, the idea of being Steve Jobs and having this voice for gamers and leading a game company and telling everybody what's going to happen, that's pretty hard to do. But I feel like there are multiple people in the Star Citizen brigade that are taking on that role, and it's becoming more of a group, a transparently group effort.
Yeah, there is definitely some leadership for the Star Citizen team. I mean, you need leadership. You can't just listen to everything the players say, but knowing what's good feedback and what's bad feedback, I think so far they're doing a pretty good job. The game's a lot of fun.
Yeah, currently. I mean, that's all you need, really.
Yeah, and they made a change to the flight model, so it was a huge change. A lot of people were like resistant to it. They're like, really? "Oh, I'm so used to it." Yeah, it's resistance to change. Everyone's uncomfortable with that. They had for many patches and releases that flight model.
Well, but also balancing trying to make everybody happy.
Yeah, but that flight model felt more like you were Star Wars. You're flying an atmosphere.
The previous flight model.
Yeah, the previous flight model felt like you're flying in an atmosphere constantly because the thrusters were constantly readjusting you and making it seem like it's in the atmosphere. And it's just those thrusters aren't that strong. They shouldn't be allowing you to change the direction of your ship when you're going fast in space. So they changed it so it feels more like Battlestar Galactica, that space combat.
The Cylon ships where they just flip and then turn around.
Well, yeah, but both ships, the human ships, Cylon ships,
nice.
It's like true like 0G, zero atmosphere flight. The thrusters are helping you to maneuver, but they don't help you change directions and fly fast in that direction.
You can't bank.
Yeah, so the larger engines you have, the more power you're going to get. So if you have large engines pointing forward, you can stop really quickly going forward. And the dog's a dork. And if you don't have if you have very tiny little thrusters in the front, you're not stopping. You flip your ship backwards and you start thrusting the opposite direction if you want to slow down. So the level of details.
Do you have to relearn how to fly?
Well, I only had the flight model for one release, the old one.
But I mean, are there any other video games that have that more realistic space flight?
Yeah, I didn't play too much of Elite Dangerous, but I think that had a more realistic flight model. There's other sci-fi games out there that have good interpretations of flight models.
I sometimes feel like if flight is too realistic, it's more difficult. Like I'm thinking about the helicopters in Grand Theft Auto.
Well, I don't know if that's a good example.
Well, no, but
it's just hard to fly.
They're hard to fly because the controls are similar to an actual helicopter.
Yeah, I mean they definitely don't want it to make it feel like an actual ship. You'd have to be a master.
Yeah,
ship master. I mean, this is the future. It's in the 2900s.
You have a chip in your brain that teaches you how to fly.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to want computer-aided flight in some regards. So there will be a lot of control, and they do want to give ace pilots the advantage. Mm-hmm. So, if you're a really good pilot, you should, and you're in a dogfight, you should be the one that wins.
That's true.
They do want to have that ability, but they don't want novices to be completely out of their depth either.
Good. So. I'm a novice. I would just like to say that right now. I don't know how to fly a spaceship. Please make it easier for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not very forgiving to new players, especially when I first started playing it. It was not forgiving. But I mean, you learn, and it's very exciting to learn, I think. You might hear our dog chewing her bone in the background.
It just adds to the atmosphere.
Yeah. We have a dog. It's real. Well, it's not a fake dog.
Slight meta point, but I always find it a little bit annoying when people apologize for oh, sorry, there's construction, and you can barely hear it.
No, I'm not really sorry.
I'm not sorry the dog's chewing on a bone because it keeps her from barking.
You chose to listen this far in this podcast, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, the flight model part of it is...
what's really cool is going to be the atmospheric flight.
Yes.
So there's going to be a difference. like the lower you get in the atmosphere, the more you're going to feel atmospheric effects on your ship. So if your ship flies well in space but is in the shape of a brick, it's going to fly like a brick in the atmosphere. But if it has wings like some of these ships do, then it may not be as agile in space, but it could be very, very maneuverable in the atmosphere. Maybe that ship was designed more for the atmosphere.
Right. Ooh, you know what would be really cool? If they got an astronaut to play the game. If they had Chris Hadfield. Is that his name? Yes, Chris Hadfield.
Yeah.
If they got, because he's kind of a YouTuber. He's pioneered the whole YouTube in the International Space Station. If he sat down and played this game and told me that it was the most realistic space game he's ever played, that would be great. I don't need that, but I think that would be really interesting content.
Right? Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, but because they are actually designing these ships with like HOTAS controllers. I don't know what it stands for, but you have the thruster mechanism like you have on an airplane,
forward and back,
right, or a ship, and then you have the joystick, like in a helicopter, to fly the ship, or you could have two joysticks, or whatever. Maybe.
Do you think they're going to introduce like custom controllers
for this game specifically?
Yeah.
I think they're just focusing on getting the mainstream controllers, flight controls into place for the different manufacturers.
But they definitely
Xbox
could.
Controller, mouse and keyboard. Mouse and keyboard is still going to be important. Or again, the HOTAS setup. They want to make it as realistic as give you whatever mechanisms to fly the ship
within the game.
Yeah, within the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was kind of funny when they first, before 3.5, I think, the visual for flying a spaceship where you have kind of that angled two-handled steering wheel. I don't know what that's called, but they had that, and the visual of your hands holding the steering wheel had it in like a weird carpal tunnel inducing bend of the wrist. And you're just watching your own hands push it forward with your wrist sticking out at an odd angle. And then they fixed that for 3.5 because it was kind of grotesque.
Yeah, it was bothering me. I felt like I was going to break my wrists every time I hit
it's like,
a bump.
That is not ergonomic. That is not good spaceship posture.
No. I'm glad they fixed it. I'm glad they said, no, that's just how you have to hold the steering wheel.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
I would not buy that ship.
We consulted with actual space astronauts who said that, yeah, I do have carpal tunnel.
They make changes all the time. Right now you can, they introduce other problems because they're continuously building the game. They had a gameplay video of Jared Huckabee,
from
one
Subway?
of the community managers. Yes, Jared. Let's not talk about Jared from Subway. And he's a community manager or something. He does the weekly videos on their site. And he was playing through the game, playing through one of the missions in the Persistent Universe. And he was just playing around, having fun on the ship. He was with 3 other YouTubers. And they were all doing this together.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like roaming around, and then he found one of the things where you fall through the ship.
He found a bug?
He clipped through the ship, and then he died.
Was this in live?
Yeah, this was all live, too.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's transparency. If you give game updates live and you're willing to show your community manager finding a major bug in the game, like... True, pure transparency. Literally.
And it's funny how they just didn't treat that as anything special.
Right.
It was like, oh yeah, glitch through the game is part of the game. They're gonna get to it eventually. It's interesting to see.
Yeah.
I mean, of course you'd like to not fall through your ship and die.
It's an alpha.
It's an alpha, man.
You're lucky that up is up and down is down.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good setup for why we want to talk about Star Citizen. There's so much to talk about. Like, we barely scratched the surface.
Yeah. I still want to talk about, like, kind of what I want to do with the game at some point.
Yeah. I think that would be an interesting premise for maybe the next episode, is talking about...
like all the careers or gameplay elements that you could do. We'll create, like, a list of them, of all the potential things that you can do.
Yeah. We already know I want to be a space farmer.
Yeah, you want to be a space farmer, and I want to be a trucker, I guess. I don't know. We'll see how that changes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, what we wanted to do with this was pretty much just get our thoughts out there, participate in the community discussion about this, and bring fresh perspective and, on my point, extremely unknowledgeable perspective and questions into the potential for this game, which could be really cool. But we also want to talk about other things. We want to talk about sci-fi shows and movies and literature and pop culture, internet culture type stuff. And the sky is the limit on that thing. So
it's gonna be all kind of around that. I think, like, Star Citizen was definitely a starting point.
Yeah.
And we may just come back into it. But yeah, if you
There's
just want to hear Star
stuff
Citizen updates, there's already plenty of YouTubers out there to talk about
experts.
That are much more involved. And
I think it's fun to hear other laymen talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there might be some other people talking about that. And
no, I mean us. Only listen to us.
Oh, yes. We're your source for all things sci-fi.
Yeah, everything that we say is absolutely correct, and it's the only opinion that you should ever have. And if anybody argues with us, we will... Okay, I'm stopping.
You guys are all initiates.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome
Should
to the
we explain
initiative.
the name of the podcast? Why we decided to call it the initiative?
It's a cool name. That's why I picked it.
Basically.
I mean, there's the Andromeda Initiative from Mass Effect.
Yeah. The initiative in Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 4.
Oh, yeah. And then there's the initiative from...
Wait, was that the initiative?
From Lost.
Oh, yeah.
The Dharma Initiative. So, I mean, it's a very sci-fi name. It sounds cool. And, we can...
it was in Buffy, the initiative.
Of course.
We'll have a whole episode about Buffy. Prepare yourself.
And, it's just...
Well, it means mission. It means a collective goal towards some kind of progress. It means starting something. It's basically all of the conceptual reasons that we love sci-fi is because of that spirit of we're trying to do something together and we're using modern technology to do it.
And I think humanity, that's kind of like what sci-fi is. It's the future-looking statement for sci-fi and humanity and where we want to be. And
you have very few sci-fi storylines that don't have something to do with humanity. So that's the cool part of it.
Yeah. So the initiative.
Yeah.
And you guys are our initiates.
Yeah.
I guess
not in a creepy way.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be
taken
wherever it's going to be taken.
Let's take a poll then later on, episode 17. If you guys want to start a cult, we'll start a cult. We don't want to close any doors.
Nope. We're all open to suggestions.
Yep.
Feedback.
We like initiative. Take the initiative. Oh my God. No. I'm sorry I said that.
Oh God. So yeah, please give us your feedback on this podcast. You might have just started watching, and we're on episode 800. Feedback's I have no idea where this podcast's gonna go and how long it will last, but we're doing
we like
it for
talking
fun.
About this. If nobody watches this, we're gonna still make it.
Yep.
That's the deal. Is that you're trapped.
You're trapped.
Yeah. We already bought the mics.
Yeah.
we have
We're
to.
We're committed. We have to.
We're not renting any of this.
Nope. We were like, we're just going to buy these nice mics and provide a podcast that maybe no one's going to listen to.
Which is fine. There's lots of podcasts out there. If you don't like it, find something else.
Yeah. If we have 5 people listening to us, wow,
that's great.
That's gonna be awesome.
Welcome, 5 people. You are now our best friends.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Okay. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good.
That wraps it up.
I think. Thank you for listening.
Yes. Thank you.
Episode 1.
And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.